Welcome to The Bone, the podcast that goes deeper. Here we cut through the noise and get straight to the core of the issues that matter. From real stories to raw truths, we dive deep into the conversations that shape our world and challenge our thinking. We're not afraid to dig in and get to the marrow of it all. Whether it's life, culture, or business in sports medicine, we're here to break it down raw and real. No filters, no fluff, just to the bone. With your host, Shelby Daly, we're getting to the bone. This is a clinically pressed, approved CEU podcast. Find the quiz to gain credit at clinicallypressed.org/courses. Clinically Pressed Company, making the complicated simple through results that give back. Find out more at clinicallypressed.org. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Bone. Today I have Lawrance, and we are going to talk about leadership. And I wanted to start off by just talking about how me and Derek ran into each other. It's always important to go to conferences because you never know who you're going to meet. What was that? NATA Las Vegas 2019, I guess?
Probably
something
so.
Around there.
It's been a while.
Yeah. So I was at an alumni meetup at a bar. I was getting a new drink, and Derek came over and started talking me up randomly. And we did introductions, and I found out he was you were the director of health and performance for the San Jose Earthquakes at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So since then, we've kept in contact, really.
That's right.
Quite consistently. So recently, well, I don't know if it's as recent, but Derek just graduated from the FIU DAT program, and he was a sounding board for me to get into the program and sold me that, might as well just get in it and get it done.
That's right. Yeah, it's a good quality program to get into, and hopefully everything is working out all right for you in the program, and you've been enjoying it and getting some good experiences and life lessons from, Dr. Jeff Conan and Dr. Coots.
Of course. I mean, I stumbled into this huge project, so, So going into it, your background, you were the head athletic trainer and then the director of health and performance at the San Jose Earthquakes in the MLS. Now, since going through the DAT, you've actually opened your own company. Did you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, just coming from the DAT program, one of the challenges that they put on you as a student is obviously coming up with your capstone project. And I had the idea of, what I wanted to do or how I wanted to see myself after MLS, since I was going on my 10th year there. And I thought it was important to try to find other avenues of generating revenue or creating money for myself. And, after you're in professional sports for so long, you tend to have your life controlled by somebody else and telling you when, where, what to do, when to eat, all these things. So it was just one of those things that in my life, I felt like I wanted to get away from a little bit, although I'm not completely away from it, but that's okay. And so the idea of starting a business to try to expand my opportunities and, monetary ways of getting money. So that was a big thing. So I started a company called IPT Performance, which is Individual Progressive Training and Performance is what it really stands for. The idea behind it was to take what I've learned working in Major League Soccer for many years and apply it to, private clients as well. And there was the big idea to try to take my skill set that I developed at MLS in terms of using GPS metrics and GPS specifically for rehab, and trying to teach the masses in a way, because there was a niche that I saw that GPS is getting cheaper and more affordable, and more schools, NCAA programs specifically, lower end soccer teams are getting a hold of GPS technology. And the fact that we as clinicians, you're always looking at objective measurements to try to, create a better rehab program for the athletes and make sure that what you're doing is correct, where, previously, or some people are still doing it, you just you think you know what you're doing, you go for it, and then some things may not work out, some things really do work out, but just trying to put a number to it. So, I can remember in my years at Elon University, going through some rehabs where I would just tell people, okay, we're going to run 4 laps, right? But we're going to do this, this, and this at these intervals within the run. Because you thought like, okay, well, we need to do some interval running, we need to do some hard running, but you didn't know what exactly percentage you were doing of their work or these type of things. So that was the idea. It's basically come out, take this company, pitch it to NCAA athletic trainers or any lower level, and just try to do that, or create some CEU programming that I could then sell in that way. Because that was the idea too, is come up with a program that CEU certified, so BOC approved provider, and then pitch that idea like, hey, I can come teach you these things, and not just teach you, but I'll also give you some CEU. So there's a double win, I thought, in that aspect. Unfortunately, but also fortunately for me, it didn't quite pan out the way I wanted to, only because an opportunity with the U.S. national team came about towards the end of my time with San Jose. And I haven't looked back yet, because the U.S. men's national team has given me an opportunity that I didn't really expect. But personally and professionally, it's exactly what I need in my life right now. And just knowing that I still created this program or business on the side through the DAT program at FIU, that if and when things ever end, I still have something that I can fall back up on. And, it's something else that I can actually build up while I'm doing this national team as well, because it can benefit me in that realm if I'm taking those skill sets and talking to other people and building bridges and networking as well. So it's
Definitely
kind of the gist of it.
So with the evolution of your job positions, that's why I wanted to have you on today, was to talk about how athletic trainers have the building blocks to possibly be the perfect performance director. But I want to pick your brain about it. And, as we learned in our leadership classes, it's really the personality and characteristics that make good leaders. So it is a newly emerging position, I feel like. It's become more respected. And I think, I've seen it that a lot of international people are coming in for this position. But with the American system, how do we grab onto that and take a hold of that position and guide it where American teams really need it to be taken?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I guess the best way to say it is everyone has the potential to be some sort of performance director, right? It's a matter of the experience that you're able to gain and the development you have professionally. You also have to have the personality to it. So personally, if you internally have issues working with other people, if you don't really see yourself as one to generate those conversations and communication with people all over the place, if that's something that you're just not into, if you're not into developing projects or planning things out, it's probably not a position for you. To say that athletic trainers don't have the skill sets, I think is completely false. I think it's just a matter of that most athletic trainers haven't grasped the full concept of what a director of performance actually does. And I think that's where our profession is really struggling in that bit. So we sit there and you'll see other people come in, you'll see performance coaches, strength conditioning coaches, sports scientists, coaches. They have a number of names and titles, right? But you'll see them come into these roles, and a lot of athletic trainers will sit there and be like, well, they don't know anything about medical stuff. Why are they overseeing us? I could be doing that. Blah, blah, blah. Well, yes, you most certainly can, but have you actually gained the experience to understand the knowledge of sports science or strength conditioning to be able to have those conversations with them at their level? Athletic trainers are exposed a little bit to strength conditioning aspects or performance aspects just through association of being on a team, but are they really grasping those concepts, or what steps are they taking to become better at those? Yes, you can go get your CSCS, but how are you actually applying that certification to actually learn what true strength conditioning, periodization, and modeling these type of workouts for everybody? If you're not doing that, then again, you're just hurting yourself as not being able to handle the performance role. So I think when a lot of athletic trainers will look at performance director role, there can be some intimidation, because there's a lot of things that we don't have the skill set on. But are you actually doing those things within your growth as a professional to actually learn and gain those experiences to take it to the next level. For me, I was kind of the beneficiary of just being in an organization that rewarded hard work and, good people. But at the same time, like, I was trying my best to learn these things, and a lot of my athletic training, rehab or treatments, I guess, were more gym based, right? And then just having conversations and learning from our strength conditioning coaches of like what their language is like, being able to speak to them about that. Obviously, as I mentioned with the GPS stuff, sports science in that area, I took a big, I was very, very interested in that stuff. So I could easily run the GPS system. I could cut the data, I could upload it, I can interpret it. I could do all those things in athletic trainer. And I think in soccer specifically, you're seeing that a lot, that where a lot of the athletic trainers are doing that because of how GPS is implemented, right? So those are the things that I did for myself professionally to develop into when I got into the role of director of health and performance, overseeing, strength conditioning coaches, performance coaches, and just being able to talk to them, but also recognizing within myself of like where my weaknesses were, to let them really shine. And that's where this whole leadership development part comes in, is understanding that leadership doesn't necessarily mean every single thing about everything, because it takes a long time to do that. And so, it's not to say that you can't do that. I'll mention that like there's people out there that I would call unicorns, where they have the skill set of manual therapy, rehab therapy, they know sports science, they know strength conditioning, they know all these things. Like there are some like that, and they have the PT degrees or athletic training degrees, and they've developed all these things. So they do exist, but is there a lot of them? No. So that's why everyone is going to be a little bit different, and recognizing where you're weak is also a key part of your leadership skills, to be able to let those that you work with shine and really support them and learn from them at the same time, because you're going to know a lot of things that they don't. And so then it needs to be reciprocated. So as long as you don't have people working with you that, question your abilities because you don't have the experience or the knowledge in these areas, that's just, again, that's how you build a rapport with your, I don't want to call them subordinates, because I hate that word. But people that you work with and part of your performance department, right? And so big thing.
Yeah. Well, and as you talk through that, in my head, athletic trainers are the center of the web. I've kind of alluded to in other discussions, where I think obviously in a close-knit performance department, everybody needs to talk to each other, but I don't think that other positions really are the center of the web. Obviously getting information, but we're still making decisions off every single piece of the performance team on, the return to play, the injury that they may have sustained, just ultimate performance. So I think it's very interesting that people haven't really realized that. And I think athletic trainers do touch and have the knowledge on most everything, but like you had said, you don't have to be the expert. You just have to be able to communicate and speak somewhat of the same language as the people that you're working with, which I think athletic trainers are some of the best at ultimately. So can you give us a overview of what the definition of a performance director is, or what the job description kind of entails? Like, what is it really?
Whatever you want to make it, I guess. To have a specific job description would be very difficult, because each setting is going to be unique in what is demanded of that position. Whether it's more medical or more performance, is this role going to be working with the coaching staff very, very closely? Is this role going to be overseeing the entire, structure of a high performance department? So therein lies what unique skill sets that specific organization may want in that role. So that's why I would say it's really difficult to even pinpoint what a job description is, because it's very different. Because you'll have teams that have the performance director that's sitting in with the coaches that are on the bench, or helping, plan out all the practices and, the proper loading and then workouts and, a number of things, and being that true center point of the entire web because they're also going to work with the medical people and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you may have someone that's strictly there to oversee the organization to make sure that everybody's working the way they should be and not working with the coaches. And that's okay too. Again, it's just whatever that organization demands of that person. And it may be completely different in NCAA because you have performance directors in the NCAA now, but they're not working with every single coach for every single sport in some
Mm-hmm.
shape or form, but they're the main pinpoint of the philosophy or processes that they want to create for all the sports to try to get everybody on the same page, right? So in that aspect, you're looking at, good communicators, good leaders. And, that's the biggest thing. And, leadership can be developed, but there's also some people that you can try to develop them into leaders, but internally they're just not going to be able to do it. And I always think about, the Peter principle that Dr. Conan taught us about, right? And you see that a lot in sports. You see people that rise their rankings because of where they are at. Maybe that was me. I'm not one to shy away from that because I went from assistant to head to director within the same organization. And whether I did a good job or not, that's up to the other people that I work with. And so, people will do all the certifications, do all the leadership conferences and read leadership books. Like, oh, I read, this great book and I'm going to apply these skills. But then if you still can't get people to buy into what you're doing, you just don't have those abilities because you're not recognizing where your weaknesses are, or, you can't get people to follow what you're doing, these type of things. So that's really the challenge that goes into those positions. And so you could see somebody that has had massive amount of experience at all these amazing places and high levels. But if you see a trend of 1 year here, 2 years there, a year and a half there, kind of jumping around, you have to really wonder, is it them? Is it their skill set? Is it their leadership skills or abilities? What is it that's changing? But then you also have to consider too, that when you go to the top, there's a target on you. So you're the one that's likely to get let go if things go wrong, right? So it's no fault to them, but sometimes. But you also look at it as performance directors in some organizations will take the onus of saying, like, I'm in control of everything. I'm the one who's going to change the performance of our team, aka I'm going to help us win, and try to take the reins of that. And if they try to do that, then obviously if the team fails or is not successful, then they're going to be let go.
Yeah.
And so that's where you start to see this weird dynamic of organizations will bring in one person for what they think is the best because this person's skill sets or experience is what they believe is going to work for the organization. And within a year and a half, they may find out, well, nothing really changed. Let's go a different direction. Then you'll bring somebody in that has a totally different philosophy, and then you have to try to change everything based on them. It's a tough revolving door in that aspect.
Are you in a position of financial danger? Working more than 40 hours and having to do per diem on the weekends just to make ends meet? Or are you financially dangerous, in control of your money and future? Athletic trainers spend years mastering the body and learning how to care for athletes. But how well do you understand your finances? Many in the field are underpaid, overworked, and left without a financial game plan. That's where we come in. At Benjamin Stackham's, not only do we provide holistic financial coaching and education to help you take control of your money and shift your money mindset, but we also help you with a generational wealth plan and future-proof your investments and retirement. For athletic trainers by athletic trainers, your financial future doesn't have to be uncertain. Let's get you in control. Visit benjaminstackhams.com today.
But I guess to better answer your question, no, I have no idea what the job description is because it is so unique to every single organization.
Yeah. Well, and with the Peter principle portion, for those that don't know, it's when someone that's not necessarily qualified for a position keeps being elevated in an organization. I guess my interpretation of Peter principle was that the person was unable to reflect that they knew that they weren't qualified for the position. Where I would think that, I mean, knowing you, I'm sure that you maybe didn't know everything, but you were willing to ask and figure it out. Where I think some people just keep with the status quo and think, they're the best at everything when they're making a lot of holes in other people's performance and jobs.
Yeah,
So
you make a really good point, because there's going to be times, again, I think I mentioned it earlier, when there's an athletic trainer looking at someone else that comes in as a director of performance, thinking like, I should be in that position. It's like, well, there's probably a reason why you're not in that position, because your peers may see that there's some glaring holes in your abilities, or they just want to go a different direction. And so sometimes it's a difficult pill to swallow. So you can look at it one of two ways. One, you can just be pissed off and angry and bitter and resentful towards whoever brings in this person and towards that person. Or you can be open-minded and say like, okay, well, what is it about this person that they're bringing in that I don't have? So what can I learn from them that can help develop me into someone to be the director of performance? Because if you have, especially if you're at an organization that, brings in somebody to start a position like that, as opposed to just picking someone that's there, it's just good because you don't have the skill sets to do it. And so again, it's just, what are you going to do as a individual personally to, progress professionally, I guess is the best way to put it. Small, like a small story for me, like I was at San Jose Earthquakes and the head athletic trainer left and they brought in somebody else when, I was still rather young into my career, and I recognized like, okay, well, they're bringing somebody that has no MLS experience to be the head athletic trainer. I could have easily just laid down and be like, I'm not going to help this person, whatever. Like, I feel like I was overlooked. But in fact, like the way I looked at it was, okay, well, I've only been in MLS for 3 years. I haven't really fully developed into my leadership, portion. They're going to bring someone in that's been a director of sports medicine from a university for many years. So obviously they have some sort of leadership. So it's like, for me, it's like, okay, well, what can I do to help this person when they first get here? Because I have the knowledge of this position within MLS. They have the knowledge and skill sets of other administrative tasks and leadership stuff. So what can I learn from them? So that's the way I faced it. And so everything seemed to have turned out pretty well from that position.
So we keep saying leadership. What is your definition of leadership?
Leadership for me is just being a strong example for those that, you're in front of. And that is being a good person, first and foremost, because people don't want to be around someone that's not a good person, in my opinion. There could be people that like are perfectly fine with it. I don't know how long they would be able to last, because at some point mentally you're probably going to break down and be like, I just can't stand this person anymore, even though they're helping me out. But, when you're working with somebody so much, and this probably applies to every other profession and stuff, if you're working with someone in that sense, like you need to be thoroughly enjoying that person, or else you're just not going to be happy. So being a good person, first of all. And then secondly is like having a way about yourself to go in and lead people, recognizing your own weaknesses and, trying to get the best out of everybody that you can, and learning from others while you still try to hold like a strong foot of like, all right, so since you are the leader, you have to have a very good idea of like your do's and don'ts, what you're willing to bend with and what you're not. You do have to have a pretty good backbone as a leader, because if not, you'll see that most people won't listen to you. Because if you get too soft on people, then they'll find those little weaknesses and, take advantage of it. As to have like a Webster dictionary definition, I guess, no, it's just a matter of, and everyone's going to be different in what their leadership is. But that's me, really. I think it just starts with being a good human first and foremost, and then just knowing, the exact ways that you want to lead people and get the best out of others. And if you can have people that work underneath you for a while and they go on to be successful in their own paths, like afterwards, like if you help support them, I mean, that's big thing of being a leader is showing the support for those that you work over top of. And if people don't feel supported, they don't want to work for you either. So again, if you're a bad person and you don't support them, then you're not going to be a very good leader at all. And so again, seeing those people move on to be more successful, I think is another sign of like what you've been able to do as a leader.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So we've all been in tough organizations. Depending on what department is giving you the hardest time, on the spectrum, shouldn't the allegiance be to the athlete, the specialist, the coaches, or the organization when you're a director ultimately?
What do you mean by allegiance?
Well, I think you kind of answered it before. It depends what type of department you're heading up or what type of organization, and who you're working with ultimately. But as a medical provider, I would say that allegiance would be to the athlete ultimately because I'm responsible for their health. But in professional organization, there is the business aspect of it. So are you going to maybe support the coaches a little bit more? I guess, what kind of dynamic do you see if, somebody's giving you a hard time about something or not working with you completely, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, better idea. I guess allegiance is you got to try to be as neutral as possible. I mean, this can be the PG thing to say, I guess, or PC thing to say. Obviously, as medical personnel, you have to be in support of the athletes. If you're not, then they're not going to trust you. And I'm sure I don't have NBA experience. I don't have NFL experience. I don't have Major League Baseball experience where guys are making a massive amount of money that can afford to go off and find people on their own. You hear stories like, oh, this player's got this person, this player's got this person. So, if they have a hint of distrust from the medical side, they'll seek help elsewhere. So I guess that's where my experience probably is lacking in terms of understanding that a bit more. So again, when I say allegiance needs to be towards the players, I'm sure in some of these aspects, the athletes may sniff out that this medical personnel has allegiance towards the organization. Because at the same time, if you're hired by the organization, you do have to keep that in mind because we're the ones paying you, and that's what's providing for your family. And so being mindful of that. I think the biggest thing for me was always just being open and honest with the athletes and talking through the situations and say, because there'll be situations where athletes may come up with like, I'm really worried about XYZ. Don't go telling the coaching staff this and that. Before I ever get into a position like that, I try to be open about the process and the thought, or like my thought process on their situation, their health situation, the return or the rehab prospect or protocols that we're going through, or even just like if an injury pops up, I can definitely think of a good story back in the day, but I won't completely go there. Just in terms of like, but again, who are you're citing allegiance to? Again, building the trust of the athlete, being open and honest with them, you'll find that you don't really have to have allegiances in that way. Because if you're clear on the decisions that you as the person in that seat has to make in terms of the organization, the coaches, and the athlete, that makes it a lot easier conversation. There are times where players would be like, I don't want to tell the coach I can't practice today. And I'd say, tough shit. Like you're an adult. If this is your decision, you need to let them know. Because far too often I would have to go, or far too often I found earlier on in my career, I would let a coach like, hey, this player isn't feeling very good. They don't think they can train. The coach would say, okay. They'd stand up, walk over, go talk to the athlete directly, say, hey, this is what they just said. Well, then the athlete would go back on their word. Right.
Yeah.
And it would make me look like an idiot. And I hated that because I was trying to protect the athlete in a way because that was my job as a medical personnel. And I would find that to, come bite me in the ass a little bit. So I would, I changed that part of my structure. It's like making sure that the athletes have conversations with the coaches because, and I would, and later on I would have that conversation, be like, look, if you're feeling this, we're going to get the coach and we're talking to it. Like I'll be here, but we're all going to talk to the coach. It's not going to be just me.
Yeah.
Because they're going to have questions that I can't answer because I don't know what you're feeling inside completely.
Yeah.
And then like, again, you probably have some people that are, let's just say there's a performance coach that's part of the coaching staff. That's where it's even trickier, right? Yeah, I've never been a part of that, so I guess I probably can't speak to that. But I can imagine that, that's a little bit more difficult when you have a performance director who's not necessarily part of the medical team, but they oversee the medical team and they have all the information, but they're sitting there in the coach's office. And so they could be seen as like, well, what are they going to say to the coaches? And then are they going to try to persuade that athlete to do what the coaches want them to do? And so again, like it still just comes down to open and honest communication in that aspect of like, look, this is what I'm coming to you about. The coaches really need you for this, this, and this. How do you feel about it? This is the way the conversation should be. And then the player's like, no, I really can't do this. Then you have to go back to that. But as far as like allegiance to an organization, I mean, yes, you have to. Again, it goes back to the paycheck thing, but ultimately it still comes down to the athlete, and wins or losses are dictated upon the athlete's performance, and their health is a big driving piece of that. So just making sure that you're keeping that in mind all the time is critical.
Yeah. Well, it just seems like over the past few years, I don't think it's as bad as it was, right when I was graduating in 2015, but it just seemed like a lot of athletic trainers were getting overstepped by coaches on decisions on returning an athlete or too quickly, or the concussion debacle of, oh, that's not a real injury. I don't think people are saying that anymore. Or even I think we're still kind of seeing it of athletic trainers being kind of used by athletes to an extent, like you had said, like, oh, it turned into a game of telephone ultimately of, well, you're an adult, you need to go talk to the coach, let them know what's going on. I just see so many instances on social media where they're having hard times with administration or coaches, but they love their athletes so much, or the athletes are really giving them a hard time. And it's kind of looking bad on them because they're just not progressing in their injury, but the athlete's not really putting in the work. So it's such a tension point to be an athletic trainer sometimes. So I guess it's just kind of keeping true to yourself and having to work through it ultimately. But I think that's where I had come up with that question ultimately of just, if you're in a rock and a hard place, how do you navigate that as a leader ultimately?
I mean, a big thing is relationships. What kind of relationship are you building with the coaches? What kind of relationship are you building with the athletes? A lot of times our relationship with the athletes will probably be, a little bit bigger because we see them in more intimate setting when we're dealing with injuries and low points and high points. Whereas the coaches are seeing it more of a transactional piece because we got to decide if this player is going to help us win or lose. And that's one of the biggest challenges for us as athletic trainers because we are dealing with a lot of the lowest level parts of their professional careers. And sometimes that's where, going back to like the allegiance stuff, is just like having those relationships with the players and rapport. There are athletes that you will learn what they can and can't do and probably not disclose certain things to coaches at their request because you trust them enough. If a player is like, I have this really bad issue going on, but I'm going to tough it out and get through get this day, because I just need a break or whatever. And I see a break coming up. And then it's like, okay, this is what we have to do to make sure you get through these days if you do not want the coaching staff to necessarily know. And again, this is their personal health. So like there's a little line you can always claim it's private health information that they don't necessarily want to disclose, which, there's always going to be aspects that can be done. But again, of you using your judgment of like, okay, I don't necessarily need to do this, but that conversation with the athlete has to be, if we do not tell the coaches and something happens And then they come to me as a medical person and be like, did you know about this? That's where the issue is going to come in. But that's where my conversation with the player has to come in to be like, look, this is a situation that could happen. We need to decide how this is going to happen. What's it going to be if it goes down this route? To be prepared to have that conversation with the coach and say, like, I didn't know about it. I was respecting their wishes because they thought they could do this. And I trusted them because XYZ, objective measurements, these type of things. And so trusting like my clinical assessments and abilities, this is why we chose not to go that route. And so again, like, could it still get you in trouble? Sure. But that's the line you have to walk, with all of it. So
Yeah.
it's just tough, but it goes back to just open communication and trusting people and building those relationships, because that's, at the end of the day, that's what's going to save you more than anything.
Yeah.
Comfortable, low profile, flexible, and easy to put on, the Vero ankle brace is simply the best ankle brace for those who move. And that's just about everybody. This brace is adaptable for any phase of injury recovery, whether you're recovering from an ankle sprain, require extra support for your day-to-day, or want to boost your performance. The Vero ankle brace delivers. The Vero ankle brace uses every movement and every step to give you extra boost. The 3-in-1 brace can be worn on either foot, making it the most optimal ankle brace for injury recovery and prevention. The removable stirrups, easy adjust Velcro, and breathable design adapt to your ankle as your strength returns, helping to protect you from re-injury. A dynamic support brace designed by leading orthopedic foot and ankle surgeons. The Vero ankle brace effortlessly adapt to your movements, offering dynamic energy return and support with each step. VeroAnkle.com. Check it out for yourself. VeroAnkle.com. That's VeroAnkle.com.
So since we, I guess, carry the burden of this information most of the time, going back to how do we optimize athletic training skills to push more athletic trainers into these types of positions? Obviously, you need some soft skills, but are there certain skills or courses or competencies that we should start adding to better suit ourselves in these positions? Because ultimately, I think case manager wise, athletic trainers are supreme to an extent. But do you see anything that we're lacking in our education system that could set us apart?
Not necessarily, because again, it kind of goes back to the Peter Principle stuff. You can teach people all the leadership skills.
Yeah.
It just, okay, I mean, just think about athletic training in general. You go through school, you're taught rehab skills, you're taught therapy skills, but until you're actually out in the field and applying them, you really don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So again, to say like, oh, you need to teach more leadership stuff in, the graduate portion of athletic training, like, it's not bad, obviously, like it's not going to hurt, but they're not going to come out of the your master's degree in athletic training ready to lead an entire group or an organization, because you've never done it before. And so the biggest thing is just finding the positions that's going to allow you to do that. And the biggest thing for me is always, if you're at a place and you don't feel like your professional development is incrementally getting better every single year, or you feel that you've hit a wall, and like, you got to leave, like you got to go find something else. And those have been some of the hardest conversations I've had before as a director or something, is when someone comes to me and they've got so many issues with everything that's going on, or like, oh, I can't grow here, there's no positions. And it's like, well, unfortunately, you got to leave. Sometimes they may take that as a threat, but it's definitely not a threat. It's like, I, as a leader, I don't want to hear you complain about things that, like, I can't control. I mean, the only way for you to move up is if I leave, and I'm not leaving because I really like what I'm doing. But just helping them to recognize that there's, the grass can be greener. It's not always greener,
Mhm.
as I've seen as well, where people feel like, where I'm at is just not for me, and this place is bad, and da, 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 I'm going to go out and get a bigger role, and then they go get a bigger role, and they realize like, oh, okay, maybe it's not everything it's cracked up to be. But
Yeah.
it's also, again, the organization that you go to may not be what you thought it was, uh, or that organization didn't sell you the job properly.
Mhm.
So it's experience. It just comes down to experience. Like that's the only way that you're really going to build those skill sets. And it starts small. Think about the MLS. I mean, that's always obviously I worked there for 10 years, so I can easily reference that. Like you want to be a leader, and like the pathway that you need to go. Well, one, it takes time. I'm sorry, but it takes time. You know, uh, like me getting to the national team, people are like, "Oh, I want to get to the national team. How do I get to the national team?" It's like, well, I did 10 years of MLS, and prior to that, it took me 14, 15 years to get to this level,
Mhm.
right? So when I have new grads or students in graduate programs be like, "How do I get there?" I mean, like, well, time, for one. So don't be in a rush. Secondly, it's, you have to develop that experience. And if you're not in positions to develop those experiences and get that skill set, then you're hurting your development.
Mhm.
So something like, when you start with an MLS club and you want to build leadership qualities, even starting as an academy athletic trainer and try to be the head academy athletic trainer, right? Where there's one or two other people that you get to start at a low level of developing certain leadership skills or seeing how you can apply to these things. Like, are you organized enough? Do you communicate well enough with these people? Are you seeing that they're listening to you and doing things as you're asking them to do?
Mhm.
Yes, then it's like, okay, well, I'm starting to see something. Then, okay, if I get to the first team, can I oversee the second team head athletic trainer and work with them directly? And then you
Mhm.
keep chipping away at each time of like trying to develop. Can you bridge the gap from the academy to the first team? Can you bridge the gap from the academy to the second team? Can you, all these things? And that's something that you do. And again, that's going to take a couple years. So 2-3 years from academy to second team, or from the second team to first team. But then
Mhm.
like you have to keep building upon that. And so like it can be done, but it takes time. And a lot of people don't think they need to wait anymore. And that's maybe the biggest issue that we have with athletic training right now, because now it's, in a master's degree, and they keep saying like, we want to make our athletic trainers look or be more professional or at the same level of other medical professionals by getting master's degree,
Mhm.
but it's totally unique because like an occupational therapist that gets like a master's degree, it's like they just go and start working as an occupational therapist within a clinic or something like that. PT, same thing. You just go and be a PT and you start working in a clinic. But again, those people aren't necessarily going to be supreme leaders and everywhere they go right out the bat.
Yeah.
And so when athletic trainers get out with a master's degree, it's like this thought process like, well, I'm told that I have to get this, and now look at me. I have a master's degree. I can go be a leader, yeah, which is completely false. And so it's difficult now. We'll see how it goes because obviously it's new, but you know,
Yeah. Well, and I think you brought up the point of we keep thinking leadership is a titled position, which, I mean, in our doctorate program, we have learned it's the characteristics that make you a leader, not the title. And so
correct.
it's working underneath and helping, your head athletic trainer in whatever projects that they have going on, trying to remove obstacles so that they can actually get their work done or whatever it needs to be. It's making everybody else's job easier to an extent, not, overworking yourself necessarily,
Hmm.
but it's building that team atmosphere and playing to people's strengths ultimately. As you mentioned before, like you don't have to know everything and be the expert. You should be able to touch on it, but there's I don't think anybody has enough time to learn every single specialty of a performance
Right.
uh, department and being able to excel from it. Um, but I think I've brought up before in other conversations of the ladder is so short in athletic training. And I think that's what's difficult is people want to be the head athletic trainer, but every organization only has one. You could be maybe an associate head or whatever, but it's really how are you specializing yourself and making yourself different from everybody else. When you were the director, since you were technically the head honcho, were you able to increase your athletic trainers' salaries by any means? I mean, that's what people sometimes see as progress, also as the compensation or responsibility ultimately. How did you navigate that as the director?
Yeah. Again, it's all organizational based too.
Mm-hmm.
So you run into situations where, I argue like, did I go to bat for them? For sure. Even when I was leaving as a director, like I went to bat to say this person should be here. These positions should be tiered like this with salaries here if you want people to stay and stick around. The pushback you'll find, and again, this could be different all over the place, is the worst one, and this is one that I heard. Again, I love the organization I work for, but this is business. It's a business still at the end of the day. It's a transaction.
Yeah.
Is if you have somebody that is in a position of an assistant and they go to become a head, sometimes organizations will say, well, it is a new position, but we can only give them X amount of raise because it would be too big of a raise to give someone. So let's just throw like some random numbers out there. All right. So like, let's say an assistant's making $60,000 and a head is making $100,000. And the head leaves and the assistant is going to move up to the head. $40,000 increase to an organization is like, that's too much for this person, even though we want them to be the head athletic trainer. But we just can't do that because that's just too much money. We'll give them more money, but we're not going to give them a proper head athletic trainer salary. Right. And so that's something that you can fight for. But if organizations like this is just internal, our internal ways of doing things, like that's going to be really difficult to go up against. And the most annoying part of that is when they go to hire someone outside to bring that person in. They'll pay that person $100,000, but they won't pay the person internally because that would be too much money for that person to go up. And I've heard of that in other areas because there are teams that are owned by conglomerates just about. Like San Jose was owned by one single owner. But there's other organizations that are owned by massive groups. And they're even more strict about their HR policies. And that's always the biggest challenge for athletic trainers because you're not part of the coaching staff. You're part of the organization. Whereas like a coaching staff, like that's kind of a blank check almost at times, right?
Yeah.
But what comes with that, if you come in with a coach, is you go with the coach. So how do you want to live your life as an athletic trainer? And that's the biggest problem too, is like you walk this fine line of like, do I want to go this route of trying to make as much money as possible? Or you face the fact that the more money you make, the easier it is for an organization to let you go. Put it that way. It's true.
It is. It's just sad.
And so you battle this constant belief of like, I need to get, and this goes back to like, the leadership stuff. It's like titles and positions. What everyone's really saying is, I want more money. Not saying it out loud. Like I deserve to be the director, over this person. It's actually, I'm saying I really want to make more money and it's not fair that I'm not getting to make more money.
Yeah.
And it's not the way you should be doing it. It's part of it. That's why I'm a big proponent of financial literacy, because when you take the money part of it, money out of your decision making, you can be a lot happier. You may not make as much money per se, but you're going to be a hell of a lot happier and you're going to keep your position. I could sit here and try to push and like, oh, I'm going to go find these director positions and I'm going to get back into that swing of things. It's just to make a lot more money, but then the lifespan of that position would probably be a lot shorter. So where does that put where are you in your life that you could take those risks, right? For
Yeah.
me, I have two very young children that, no, I don't want to go into a job that could be a 2-year stint, right? I'd rather find something for me that's going to give me longevity, that I'm comfortable with the money that I'm making, and be able to do a really good job because I'm really happy. And so
Yeah.
that's a big thing for me. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges a lot of the athletic trainers will face right now is they're not happy because, oh, I'm overworked, blah, blah, blah. No, it's all money. But if you can find a way to balance out the financial side of your life, you're going to be way happier. And then you're not paper chasing. Like, oh, I'm going to go take this position, like, oh, I'm going to take a sales position because they make a lot of money. Well, now you're grinding even more, but administratively in numbers and, your CSM positions and, doing all these Zoom meetings and, trying to match sales rather than treating people, like, again, the grass isn't always greener, but again, when you chase money, like it changes a lot of aspect. And so that's why it's important to know your value, but also know what's your life is, your life value in terms of like your happiness. And that comes sometimes with lower pay, but that's okay. You just need to make sure you adjust your spending and everything to do so.
Raise the bar in 2025. Complete your BOC certification maintenance requirements early. Don't forget that 2025 is a reporting year for athletic trainers. Are you on track to complete your BOC certification maintenance requirements? Find out today by logging into your BOC profile at bocatc.org/BOC360. That's right, it's time, and this year is the year to renew your certification maintenance requirements. Check it out at bocatc.org/BOC360.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if that's kind of the self-perpetuating circle or cycle, is that the Peter principle happens so often is because, you think the title change, you're going to get more money. And that's kind of the root on why I think a lot of people want to move up in leadership, is they think the money is associated with it. Yet they don't necessarily acknowledge the increase in responsibilities most of the time that come with it, with the job that you're already doing. So interesting insight on that one.
or what you run into too is you ask other trainers, what do you love about your job? Like, what do you love about athletic training? Oh, I love getting my hands dirty. I love treating people. I love the rehab part. I love getting in the gym and making people feel better and this and that. Okay. What do you think a director does?
None of that.
None of that. None of that. They oversee it to make sure everything's going well, but none of that. And again, you're going to fight this battle because, again, I want more money, so I have to get in this position, but you get away from the things that you really love. And so you probably won't like that job as much because, like you said, it's a lot more administrative stuff, a lot more meetings, a lot more grandiose ideas and projects and stuff. And so you have to be really committed to know like that's what's going to change, because I've seen that often where people move into positions and they're like, I don't get to do the things I want to do. So now it's like, I used to, someone comes up, I'm the rehab coordinator for this team, which is a great position. I mean, you get to go on the field, kick a ball, do all these things, and you're just focused on the rehab stuff. Like that's your main focus. You get to learn all the new skills. You get to take the classes that teach you new tricks to do manual therapy or these things. And like, you really enjoy that part. But then you're like, man, I'm making that much money. I need to go make more money. Okay. I need to be a head athletic trainer. Okay. You could be the head athletic trainer. Well, I want to be the rehab coordinator. It's like, well, we need you to focus on these things. You can't focus on that. It's like, well, what do I do here? And that's the biggest challenge. And so like, if you can get into an organization where they really value their people, and, if a leader can get the organization to put that money behind people, even though that may not be a title. And that's one of the things I feel like where we're all handcuffed based on titles is organizationally, HR, it's like black and white. It's like the academy athletic trainer, no matter what, is an entry level position. We're never going to pay them more than X amount, even though you could have the best clinician, best person in this position, you can't pay them more than X dollars. And that sucks, even though they probably deserve it. Same thing with like the first or the second assistant for athletic trainer, like second assistant, in MLS. I keep referring to that. We only value this position at this because according to our books and our records of HR, this is just what it is.
Yeah.
We're not bending on this. So you've maxed out your position. And I've talked to other athletic trainers that have been through that, where they've maxed out their position because their organization's like, we're just not going to pay you more because we don't have it set up to where we will.
Yeah.
And that's a bummer because that means you've worked there long enough, you've enjoyed it, and now you've just been told by, I don't even want to call a name for an HR person, but like the HR saying like, sorry, this is it. Go somewhere else if you don't like it. And they hold all the power. That's why sometimes working for big teams that are run by big organization groups, conglomerates, whatever you want to say it, sports, entertainment groups, can be a kind of a bummer because they're the ones who hold all the leverage for now. Like something like my position when I was at work San Jose, like it didn't work that way. So like, I was fortunate enough to go through those things, and my rise through the ranks did fall in line with some bigger pay raises, which was great. And again, that's why I really enjoy that organization. And it's just again, goes back to whatever organization that you work for, it's always going to be different. Always going to be different.
Yeah. Well, and that's, with me being with the academy, that's where it was so interesting, is that's where they're making their big money contracts were off the academy kids. I mean, the union signed that 15-year-old that's going to Manchester City. And it's like, okay, if you guys want to keep making money off these contracts, shouldn't you put more emphasis into the academy? Because that's where your homegrown players, and you're going to be able to prep them for going international. And that's where like I had the biggest problem, was they didn't really see that big picture. They knew they were going to make money no matter what, but they could have created more quality. And that's what drove me crazy ultimately.
Well, if they spent more money, then they wouldn't make as much money.
Well, yeah. Well, you put people that actually know how to put in the programming though, but that's a whole different story. So you kind of hit on it, but is this why there's so much turnover in the performance director positions? Is all these different types of variables of, the interactions with team members? Are they just getting burnt out because there's so much pressure on them? Do they get pulled in different directions? I guess even though your story is different than others, you see kind of a high turnover in these director positions. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is what I alluded to earlier, is when you're at the top of the food chain, you're the easiest one to get knocked off, right? And a lot of that in the turnover aspect is, there's a lot of things that you can't control. Something as simple as the coaching change. You get hired by a coach, the coach comes in, brings you in, you're running the show, like everything's great. After 1 year, results were okay. You just kind of have this like tension, like, okay, let's just try to change some things, or we just stay course because this is what I know. This is what has always worked for me everywhere else. Start the next season, 3-4 months in, head coach gone, director of performance gone. Like everything you just tried to build over the past year and a half, out the window, completely wiped out. Let's just change everything, right? Yeah. So that's part of it, is because most director performances will tie themselves to a coach. Right. Because again, that's how you get more money, And so these are the risks that you take, and you can see it when, like, if somebody's brought in with a coach, you can see like, this has got an expiration date for sure. Majority of the time there will be an expiration date, and it'll be sooner than what their contract is. Unless it's highly, highly successful, which is what you always want. And so that's why the performance directors, run into issues. Or let's say the director of performance is hired by the organization and is on the organization side, not the coaching side. So then what happens? Maybe the organization brings in a coach that you don't really like, or maybe that coach just doesn't really like you, or maybe they don't even speak the same language, so you're never going to talk to them in anyways, right? So you, in that position as a director of performance, you have to look at it and say, do I want to sit through this, or do I want to go find somewhere that's going to make me happy, right? And sometimes you see that. You'll see director of performances that get longer contracts because typically an organization will be like, okay, we want this person to come in and lead our performance coaches, our medical, and we want to build something. That's always a good phrase. We're building something. So that's what they'll do. But then new coach will come in, or they'll get hired. They're with their current coach. Coach gets fired. New coaching staff comes in, a shiny new object, a shiny new toy. Coach says, I'm bringing in my own performance person. The organization says, well, we have this person already here. Coach is like, that's great and all, but I'm bringing my own in. And if you don't let me, then I'm not coming. And they're like, oh, no, we want you, because coaches can change a lot. Coaches have way more influence on a team than most, if not all, director performances.
Yeah.
Some people may not believe that, but I'm witnessing it time and time again. So you run into that situation. Then the director of performance is like, well, I got a couple more years left of my contract. What am I going to do? Do I wait to see if they let me go and pay me out? Do I sit here and just try to work with this person and try to be happy doing it? Or do I sit here and be angry about it and just say like, well, I'm covered for the next couple of years and I'll just show up, and then if we all just find it very cordial, then I'll whatever. So there's so many different aspects to the position. That's why the turnover is there, because coaching changes are going to affect a lot of it. And since you don't necessarily control that part, you just control like who you're attaching yourself to, the organization or the coaches. That's going to dictate your shelf life tremendously.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to put out there on this topic that we missed?
No, I think I babbled enough about all of it. I mean, you can kind of see where I stand on a lot of it, and if people, I guess the biggest thing is if you're an athletic trainer, and you can look at my comment, my most recent thing on LinkedIn as well. It's just like if director of performance is something that you want to achieve, you have to go out there and get outside of athletic training. You have to. And that's what's going to allow you to be respected at the table. And that's one of the biggest things that a lot of performance directors will always be challenged with, is especially like if they bring in somebody who's a performance only person that has no medical background. How are you going to get the medical people behind you? And then it'll be vice versa. Like if you're an athletic trainer, all you've ever done is athletic training, and you've never ran a gym session, you don't know how to periodize weight room, you don't know how to do all these things, then you're not going to get the respect from the performance coaches. If you don't know how to do GPS, how do you expect to get sports scientists to back you? So again, it just goes back to like, you have to gain these experiences. And so like, stop always looking to get manual therapy certifications. Go and get, into the gym, go get weekend courses that are geared towards CSCS people, like learn these aspects and then apply them. Like sports science internships, I think would be huge for athletic trainers, because then you can start there and learn how to collect data, run it through the necessary process, and then analyze it and interpret it. Yeah. And now that's just like a foundational skill set. Now you can start taking that and apply it elsewhere. So that's my biggest thing for athletic trainers, is like, stop being so narrow-minded of that. You're God's greatest gift to athletes because you treat them medically. It's so much more than that. And if athletic trainers don't realize that, they're never going to get to those positions. Yeah.
Well, and I think it goes back to the chasing the money portion. Right now, I think there's this stigma that you have to get paid for every single thing you go out and do. And you're not going to be able to get paid to get some experiences. Like for a strength and conditioning coach, they're not making
investment either.
No. So, a paid internship's not necessarily the route you're going to be able to do. And, you're going to get the best experience for the most time you put in. But being able to do touch points randomly, it will help bring it all together ultimately. And make it flow so you understand and how to communicate. And after I got my CSCS, rehab made way more sense for sets and reps and what you're trying to achieve with certain exercises.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's, poking into the unknowns of medicine, the holistic care, and the performance side, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certifications are there to build your toolbox to use. And although some people may see it as more letters after their name, which should equate to more money, but I always think of one of my original peers who told me, after they got a couple more certifications, I very proudly showed his father, "Look, Dad, I just got this new certification. I got this, and this is." His dad's response was, "Okay, well, how many zeros are on your paycheck?" Right?
Yeah.
And so, again, it goes back to you can acquire something and go test for something, but if you're not applying it, it means nothing. And then you're not going to be able to make the money off that. So it's just these are what gives you the tools to go use them and become better at it. But if you don't apply them and use them, then you don't deserve anything for it whatsoever.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say more money, more problems.
No. Well, that's always true because, like I said, if you're the director of performance, you're making a lot more money than everyone else, but you're going to have a lot more, just like being unemployed at some point, So.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for being on the show. If anybody wanted to contact you, what's the best route or place to find you?
You can just find me on LinkedIn, I guess would be the easiest way to find me.
Okay, perfect.
If you see my name right here somewhere, then make sure you don't misspell my last name and you'll find me.
Exactly. So, well, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll have you on again to talk more about maybe the data stuff that you're putting together. It'd be great to learn more about.
We'll see.
So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of To the Bone. I hope we've sparked some new thoughts, challenged your perspectives, or simply reminded you to dig a little deeper. Remember, life isn't just about what's on the surface. Sometimes you've got to cut deeper and get to the bone of what really matters. To the Bone podcast is a product of Daly LLC. It's hosted and produced by Shelby Daly, ATC, and Randy Daly. No clinical decision-making should be based solely on one source. While care is taken to ensure accuracy, factual errors can be present. For more on the show, visit www.tothebonepodcast.com. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Get involved in the conversation. You can find us at www.tothebonepodcast.com. Drop us topic suggestions or be a potential guest. We're all about connecting with you, our listeners. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep cutting deep.